welcome back to Bunters Yard. Now, please don't panic, my hands haven't shrunk. This is actually, as you know, an O gauge wagon, so a lot larger than the normal double O that we're used to on here. This one is on loan from an Instagram friend and follower, Craig. So just big thank you for allowing me to let myself loose on this and have a little practice with a O gauge rather than double O. So we're going to pop the wheels off first. And a good thing about obviously working on O gauge, the fact it is just larger, and obviously one of the benefits of that is a bit more sort of targeted with our weathering. That's detail is larger, so we can be a bit more precise with what we do. So first thing we're going to do is to use this these little pads. Now this is, you can see the make of that, this is a 220 abrasive pad, and I'll put the link down below to the place where I bought these from, and these are just very good for sort of distressing the paintwork on the side of these wagons. It just makes it look a bit more worn rather than nice and shiny and pristine. Be very careful with using any sort of power tools and rotary tools on your wagons, because it does generate a bit of heat, and if you sort of dwell for too long, you'll suddenly see your wagon melt right before your very eyes. So it's quite a light touch, and just don't hover for too long, and try and avoid some of the raised details too much. You can see the rivets and the bolt heads just they get the brunt of the abrasive action fairly quickly, so you could lose those completely, and that's one of the benefits of our O gauges, that we've got those details so sort of prominent, and we can get to work on them. So we need to just sort of distress this. Now, one of the good things about this actual Dapol is that the plastic that is made from is a nice wood colour, so as we break through that red paintwork, the red livery, we actually get a bit of wood colour coming through, which isn't a bad thing. Now, just because this is O gauge, don't let it put you off if you're a double O or an N gauge modeler, because the techniques we use on this is similar to all the other gauges, and anything that we do on this is transferable to different gauges. Having said that, some of the things might be a bit more difficult on N gauge and so on, and may not be as visible as they are on this one, but this is a good sort of demonstration of some of the other things that we could do. So we're going to go all around the wagon and just get rid of some of the paint. Now, we could have gone a little bit further and maybe even created some damage to the top of the rails there, maybe sort of chipped a bit away, or had a broken one. This isn't my wagon, so I was maybe a little bit more sort of restrained than it would have been if it was one of mine, or if it was a £3 Hornby one from eBay. But anyway, there we are, that's that bit finished. So I've gone all the way around that. Now, just to give it a nice little fade and a dirty appearance, we're going to start with this really light sort of coverage. This is a colour called Sand from Vallejo, and we're just going to wipe it back off straight away while it's still wet. That creates a few little runs. It will catch in some of the sort of voids in between the planks, and we'll just sort of highlight those just a little bit more. You haven't got to be too careful about cleaning it off, just be careful about leaving bits of blue paper stuck to the rivets, as you see there on the door. So you can see it's just sort of made it look a bit more faded and distressed, basically. Let's put some extras in along by the rails and the hinges. The sort of places that dirt and dust would be likely to catch. same on the ends. Generally speaking, the ends would maybe be a little bit more dirty than the sides. They would get less attention if something like this is ever going to get cleaned. The back is really not going to get much of a clean, but even just sort of running around when it's raining, the ends would be sort of protected by the next wagon in the line, so there wouldn't be much sort of activity of rain and so on to clean this off too much. So we tend to have the ends, or I do tend to have the ends of those just a little bit dirtier than the sides. So as sort of is standard on a weathered plank wagon, we're going to change the colour of some of the planks. So just to sort of show that they've been changed at some point and replaced and repainted with primers. So the colours we've got in our palette there, you can see there's a neutral grey over in the top. We've got an off colour white. You can use normal white, but this is off white. Whole grey is on the right, which is that dark red, and then that pinky one is kind of a mix of the two. Some wood undercoats are pink, so I'm not sure if they would be during this period, but anyway, that's the colour we are going to use. So just using our fine brush, this is a 3-0 brush, and it's going to take a couple of coats. We don't try and do this in one pass. You probably won't ever cover everything because of the different colours that are underneath the black, sort of shadow detail and so on. So just a couple of light coats. Try and be random. Or try and think actually where repairs might tend to be. Top rails, I imagine, get more damage than the ones lower down. Ones right at the bottom may be more susceptible to rot, where sort of water and moisture is gathered on the inside of the wagon. But just take your time doing this bit. This is it's quite a nice effect, I think, and pretty typical. If you look at lots of old pictures, you'll see that nearly all the panels have been replaced. Some are just completely it's like Joseph's Technicolor raincoat, I was going to say then, but he's Technicolor coat, and they'll be all different shades. I was hoping to do one of these soon where we've actually got panels from another wagon, so some of the planks have been replaced and have a completely different colour and bits of different livery on that as well. So that's another time perhaps. So a bit of the pink now. Let me just get it to a shade that we like. So you can see it's not going to go in one coat, especially with a brush. There being a larger scale, O scale, I guess we could even mask these off if we wanted to and be more precise with an airbrush. But it's possibly just a little bit quicker with a fine brush. Depends on your hand and how good you are with that. So just going to thin this down a little bit, just as normal airbrush thinners, just to make it a bit more fluid and easier to brush on. The whole red is a model colour, so it's not thinned down. So you need to really thin it down, especially use it in airbrush. But if you're going to brush it on, it's a little bit better as well. But you can see it's come out a bit patchy. So this will take 2 or 3 passes, and that will be okay. Just pay sort of attention to where the planks end. Obviously on this one there's a door in the middle, so they only go sort of part way up. There's a line as you go further up the top. Then each of the panels, the planks would go the full length perhaps, or if they're replaced, it might be replaced sort of up to one of those joins and have a patch somewhere along the line. this is the grey. This is Model Air, so this is already thinned down, so we use it straight from the bottle. Just the last one for this side, I think. That'll probably do us for this bit. We need to go around the whole wagon and do a similar thing on the other side, and obviously on the ends, if there's got any repair. Depends on how sort of aged and distressed you want your wagon to look. Now we're going to be able to see the inside of some of this, or most of this actually, so we need to duplicate on the inside as well. The panels were replaced on the outside, so on the other side of that pink one there will be another pink panel on the other side, so it looks like it's been replaced properly on the inside and the outside. And there we go, this is the second coat, so much better coverage now, it's fully dried. So we're going to crack on with some rust streaking. So the rivet heads or the bolt heads are nice and large on these. So we are going to do the first bit with acrylics. Then you can use oils, and we'll use that a bit later on other bits and pieces. But literally we're just dabbing on this orange rust, which is a Vallejo here. So it's already pre-thinned. And while it's still wet, so you can use that dry brush just to drag it down and create those streaks, the sort of rust streaks. And you don't have to do it on every bolt head. You may just want to do it at the top few, or just randomly apply it here and there. And then I'll just put it in a darker colour. This is the dark. This is chocolate brown, and it's just rust will be different shades. So the streaky rust will normally be the lighter bit, and then where it's come from, the scabby bit will normally be a bit darker. And just a real soft sort of brush on that, just to smooth it in and blend it just ever so slightly. Now, if you don't like the shape of some of the runs, while this is still wet, you can clean it off to some degree. So I'm just going to try to tidy up some of those. And we can obviously do these streaks in oil paints, which are much simpler to manipulate once they're on. But this is fine for this particular bit. And we're going to use the oil paint, so that's the oil brusher on our next piece for some sort of rusty patches. Now these are already pre-thinned straight from the tube, so I don't need to thin them anymore. But that brush is I think we'll probably use that on like a 1-to-1, a life size, but on O gauge and anything smaller, definitely not. So just going to put literally just a dab or two in the palette there, and we'll use a small brush to apply that and target it where we need that to go. So this is our triple O. These are Army Painter ones, I think. just going to add it in places. So we're not going to streak with this. This is going to be for sort of rusty patches. So we can put it on fairly liberally. You might notice that buffer is actually broken. It was already like that when I got it, Craig. I didn't break it, but I have glued it and reinforced it since and covered it up. So hopefully, it will be as good as gold. So with another brush and some odorless thinners. So it's got to be odorless thinners for oils. Don't use normal thinners; it doesn't work. But we're just going to touch it in, and as we touch it, capillary reaction will sort of make it spread, and you just end up with a kind of rusty looking patch, which is what we like. If the effect isn't as much as you'd like, just add on some more oil and then repeat the process until it looks how you need it to be. Don't forget, some of this is going to be covered up with different colours and weathering and so on. So just bear that in mind. Some of this detail may completely disappear and be obscured by the time we finish anyway. So concentrating these rust stains around these around the buffers, so on the bolts and around the edge. And again, we'll just touch it in a moment with thinners just to create a rusty patch. So possibly the rust is going to run from the bottom of the that corner reinforcement, and maybe from one or two of the bolts or the exposed edge of that angle. So you can see it's fairly, hopefully it's fairly subtle. Just all adds to the sort of the overall sort of look and the illusion of what we're trying to achieve. These Dapol wagons come with these three link chain couplings rather than the sort of decouplings and the other types that we got on 00. So these are nice to include in your weathering as well, rather than that big plastic coupling that I say comes in standard on the on 00. So we're adding a bit of rust just in a few extra places around the side. You can see we've done some of the bolts and underneath the hinges where it's gonna be likely to run. And we can just blend that in if we need to just make it run along that edge of that white plank. Just shows up nicely. So that's the outside done. Well, for this stage anyway. So we need to add some dirt, I think now. So now anthracite is obviously like a coal. Maybe it is coal actually, but anyway, it's coal. So we're going to use some black, and we're adding the flat brown. Don't want it totally black, although it will look very black. It's actually got a touch of brown in it. And we're going to add it into the places where you know, it's likely to be most. So along the tops of the rails, I reckon would see most of the action, and then there'll be some runs going further down. Now this is completely up to your taste how much of this you would add on. This is going to be quite heavily weathered, as sort of typical with us here. But I say it's just a matter of, you know, taste. You may want to end there or quite some time before there. Actually, it's up to you. But just going lightly, not too heavily, otherwise you'll just lose all the detail, just be a solid lump of black. And we need to do inside as well. Now inside's going to get some tiny bit of load along the bottoms, but really not a lot, so we just want to make this a bit dirtier than it is, a bit too pristine. Now if you're putting a load in or a tarpaulin over, you may not want to spend as much time on the inside, but we're just going to give this a little blast over with our black brown that we've mixed in. And then along the bottoms we are using, this is one of our sort of earth colours, the mud colours that I like to use. So this is earth brown. There's different versions of this. It depends on where your environment you're modelling in. You may want to use, you know, just the black and the soot rather than the mud. So it's up to sort of your discretion, I guess, with that. I'm just going to knock this back a little bit with a brush, just to get rid of some of it and make it less solid. I'm just going to clean back a couple of bits, like the running numbers. They're normally visible and they're normally sort of wiped back, and there may be some other bits on there that would need to be shown, sort of as a matter of course for your traffic on your layout. So just to soften the black down and make it look a bit more used, just dabbing in. This is just normal airbrush thinners, but you could use IBA, and I'm using just a sort of Scotch-Brite piece of pad, just so it doesn't come out too solid, just really adds in a bit of a randomness. And then with one of our brushes, this is a nice worn brush, we'll just drag it down a little bit. Now this will create some streaking and some patches, and you can just see that sort of looks like it's been sort of you know, handled and rubbed against by bodies and bushes and what have you. And some of the colours starting to show through again. Just do this a little bit at a time. Don't sort of rush it. It's you can take more off simply enough. If you need to use a bit more thinners in certain areas, then go ahead and do that. Just don't put it on too sort of wet, too thick. Otherwise, it will just take everything off that you've already done, including some of the replacement panels that we've the planks that we've coloured in. It will go through them eventually, but. This just leaves a nice sort of runs and smears. Just looks like it's been out in the rain and the coal dust, and the soot has run down the sides. And then just for a little bit of extra detail, didn't have any hands I could make impressions with, but around these places like these catches at the top, there may be some more sort of signs of use. So if someone's gone into it with their hands and tried to unlock the catch, for instance, they may have rubbed off all the soot dust and that's sitting underneath and we've gone back through to the original sort of livery colour. So we're just going to scratch off a few pieces of sort of random soot and grime. So next stage is on to our weathering powders. Now if you've watched the channel before, you'll know sort of the favourite colours that we use. These 4 rust tones are from a Vallejo set. You can buy them separately, and I'll put the links down below to the separate shades if you don't want to use all 4. Now when I first got the set, I admit I really used the sort of brighter rust. So that one there, which is the burnt sienna and then dark red ochre. The 2 in the middle, because they're most typical sort of rust colours, but the burnt umber, the dark one at the top, that's a real good sort of base layer, a nice dark rust. So I normally go in with that first, and then start using the other colours just a little bit less each time. The yellow one at the end, the dark yellow ochre, is really quite a useful colour. It looks a bit weird. You don't really consider it to be sort of rust, but just add a little bit in, just a little dot here and there. It blends in with the other colours, and when you use your varnish or your lacquer at the end, it will mute it down a bit anyway. So yeah, a real nice mix, those 4 colours. And then I've got the dark earth, the Humbrol one at the top as well. That's quite a useful one to use as well. So that sort of kind of ties it all together. And then just so I get an idea of where we're at with the powders, because they do mute down when you use your varnish. So we're just going to give it a light dusting, as you've seen there with it's the AK Interactive Ultra Matte Varnish, which is a really sort of flat varnish, really lovely. Just a little bit of that, and then we can carry on adding in some more rust where we think it's appropriate. Now with these particular powders and pigments, they have really good coverage. They do stick to everything. So just be very careful. I think I've said this in nearly every video I've ever made. Just use a little bit. It's easy to put more on. It's not as easy to take it off. So we'll give it another coat of the Ultra Matte Varnish. See if we're happy. Just a little bit into those recesses, just at the front and the back of where the buffer bars or buffer beams are. They would tend to catch any sort of the mud and the grime, I guess. And just another light dusting with the Ultra Matte Varnish now. Different brushes, by the way, will give you kind of different effects. So just experiment with different brushes, different sizes, softness, hardness, and flat brushes, and so on, because they will be slightly different. So it's worth having a little sort of toolbox of brushes. Now I've got 5 or 6, and I use them for different things. And the little flat one, which is seen better days, it's going to be a bit curly, so that might be changed soon. And then the soft flat one, and will give you a different effect, just as it would if you're going to use it for painting. So they have slightly different uses. Now on this particular side we sprayed it with the matte varnish first, and we're going to get a different kind of effect because the pigments go on and they go into sort of muddy consistency. We'll put it on a bit wetter here, so it's going to look a bit wet anyway. It will dry off, but it will give a different look, as you'll notice as we go along. So the main focus of this is the buffers, or those I know they've got a name, I have no idea what it is, but those bit where the buffers sit. Someone will tell me down below in the comments. I am fairly confident of that, so excuse my ignorance. But they're going to get a bit grimy and a bit crusty and covered in mud, and they're going to have maybe some grease residue, so there'll be a bit of blackness on there as well, and a bit of rust. So we're just going to dab a bit of that in. So this is the Humbrol black that we're using, and a really nice, really good coverage. So again, just be careful how much you add on, because it just does stick to your model really, really well. So down to our final parts now. So wheels now, these are obviously easy to paint while they're off. So I've given these just a slight misting with the ultra matte varnish. This just helps the pigments stick to it a bit better. So the scheme I'm going to go for is pretty much the darker brown as an all over sort of coverage, and then a bit of rust around the outside, and then the black in the center to sort of denote sort of dried grease and oils. Not that a lot of it's going to be seen, because once it's on the wagon it looks a bit different. So we'll give it a little dust in. You can see the colours sort of fade away as the lacquer dries. The colours will come back a little bit, but we can add in some more, same as we did on the sides of the wagon. So some markings on the side. There's normally chalk markings. These are destination markings and different things. These are just kind of random things that I'm making up. I'm sure they have no relevance in real life. If you're doing this for your own layout, you may want them to be relevant to you know, your layout and where it's destined to be and where it's sort of is geographically. But I'm just putting some markings on just to show with that chalk pen. I'll put that down in the description as well. It's quite a useful thing to have. It's probably one of the best white chalk pens I've had. So popping the wheels back in, just make sure that those the edges of those sort of spindles, the pointy bits, they were clean, and there's no weathering powders and varnish on those. Otherwise it won't roll as nicely, obviously. And the last bit for today, I think, is our axle and bearings grease. So with the smallest brush that I've got, as you can see, even on an O gauge, just going to use a small brush. I'm just going to put a little bit of the grease in the places where you might get oil runs and greasy marks and that sort of thing. So around some of the joins, you just touch it in. You don't have to brush it in. If you just touch it, leave it to dry, and it will, normal drying action, capillary will make it spread out, and the edges will soften, and it will stay as it'll kind of maintain a kind of semi-wet look, so it looks like just dried oil basically. There's different colours and flavours of this one, different engine oils and all sorts of things, but this one's quite general, quite a useful one. And if you touch it in with some thinners afterwards, it'll make it a bit more dilute and a bigger patch, same as you did on the rust sort of really thing, but you'd need to use enamel thinners rather than oil thinners. And then on the buffers, I'm just going to put a dot of this on there, and then we just need to soften that. You can use your finger. The only problem with using your finger is sometimes you get a fingerprint, which kind of looks a bit weird. So I'm just using the back of a sponge, or you can use a cloth or a dry brush, whatever you choose to use. And then we're going to put a little bit of a load on the inside, just as a sort of nod to the fact that it's been used for anthracite. Now, we don't have anthracite. I'm not sure if you can buy anthracite loads from Hattons, but anyway, this is one of the coal grades, one of the coarse grades I think it is, and we're just going to shovel it around the edge just to make it look like it used to be in there basically. And then we need to fix that into place, and we're going to use on this Mod Podge. So I've mixed the Mod Podge. This is a matte Mod Podge. Mix this down to 3 parts water, I think, to about 1 part of Mod Podge. Some people go to 6 to 1, I know, so it depends on trial and error really. That 3 to 1 is where I'm at, and it seems to work. First thing I need to do is with any load, it's just as dust with water, and it's got one single drop of washing up liquid in there. It just breaks up the surface tension when we put the Mod Podge on, and it will soak in. Otherwise it'll just sit on the top, and it just takes ages to go away. So we just need to let that dry. That's it can take a few days, depends on I suppose your temperature of your room. Now we're at 6 degrees. It's quite chilly in the studio, so this will take a few days. I'm going to leave this over the weekend to dry properly before we ship this back to Craig. But here's the finished article. Craig's seen this and it was chuffed, so which is great. So I think we'll be doing some more O gauge, even just for our own pleasure. But until then, thanks for joining us once again. If you've not already subscribed, if you're new to the channel, please do click the subscribe button and join us for our regular updates, and we'll see you all very soon back at Bunters Yard.